call it order.
We call to order.
Okay, all right, this is a work session, so we don't do, all the stuff you do in a regular council meeting, but two purposes of getting y'all together. One, if you remember, one of your counterparts, Bobby Kilgo, asked for Tether Ordinance to be reviewed, and I think he might have even mentioned he'd like for it to be compared to Florence County's ordinances. So we've got copies of, Terry's got copies here of our ordinances, Beaufort counties, Florence County, and York counties. And so Florence is there for that comparison. The other thing is, Mr. Hatfield had requested through the county attorney that we consider adopting Beaufort County's ordinances for animal control and animal welfare. So this is here as well for you to look at. There's no final decisions to be made today, but the purpose of having a little ad hoc subcommittee is to do some reading, do some discussion, to think about it, come back and maybe work out a proper proposal between staff and what y'all think that would go to the full council as, what do you call it? A motion. So we'll just dive right in. If that's okay with y'all. Terry, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, because I may summarize something or whatever. But our current ordinances do not address tethering, is that right? And so if you look at the one at the top, it says Florence County. And then Terry, you said it was on which page? Looks like it starts at the bottom of the second page. Yeah, y'all see it says 2-/11 at the bottom of the page of the Florence County where it starts on tethering. And like I said, ours doesn't have anything specifically addressing tethering. Now you talked to Florence County, didn't you? Anything particular you want to make sure they're aware of? Did they tell you anything they liked, they didn't like, they'd like to change on the tethering portion? Or?
No, they just said they enforced the tether laws.
They forced the tether laws. So just a quick review of, I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'm just going to try to read through this. Of course, tethering means anything hooked to a chain, rope, running line, harness, or similar device. And nothing in this ordinance is supposed to prohibit somebody from walking a dog on a leash, of course.
So what you're saying, excuse me for me, so
Go
you're
ahead.
saying that the dog chained up in the yard
Yeah, chained up in your
for
yard.
so
rope.
long?
Well, I'm fixing to go through what this says. So it says it'll be unlawful unless the following conditions are met. So, one, it says the tether must be attached to a properly fitting harness or collar and not to the dog's neck. So there, that one right there says that a rope or chain could not be itself around the animal's neck.
No, but it's
And
bottom too?
yeah. See,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, I'm too far down, okay.
Okay, so that A says essentially, if you had a rope or a chain or whatever, that itself cannot be around their neck and then connected to something. You have to have a proper harness, a proper fitting harness or collar that the tethering, whatever it is, rope, chain, whatever it's hooked to. It says the tether must be at least 15 feet in length and positioned that at its greatest length it prevents injury, strangulation or entanglement with any obstruction, man-made or natural, the animal. And it's got to employ some type of swivel, at least one end of the tether, to minimize tangling. It says tether assembly attachment should not exceed 1/10 of the dog's body weight. In other words, you couldn't tether them with a railroad chain.
Right, that's what I was, yeah.
Or at least it had to be a big old dog if you were tethering them with a railroad chain.
Now you're gonna get the argument about, you got so many people got dogs that are pop certain chain. You might have a,
I know, I'm just going over what it says here. I'm not arguing for or against, trying to say it.
yeah.
I was just going through,
Look like them
I think
pigs
1/10 of
and
the dog's
Rottweilers.
weight. I mean, a Rottweiler's probably what, at least 40 pounds?
Yeah, That's
So
what I'm saying.
a 10-pound chain,
he'll pop that right easy.
you think so? A 10-pound chain? Well, I don't know. I'm just asking. All right. So the next thing on the list for Florence's order, we don't have to adopt it exactly, it's just something to consider. Tethering their dogs for more than 8 hours at a time in any 24-hour period is prohibited. Now, when I read that, the first thing I think is, what if somebody works at Nucor and they work a 12-hour shift and they got plenty of food, water, and shelter for the animal, but they're gonna be gone for 12 hours? That, I mean, somebody could argue that, that just pops in my head as an issue. The next one, a dog is not to be tethered outside during extreme weather, including but not limited to extreme heat or near freezing temps, thunderstorms, or floods. A tethered dog must have access to adequate shade, shelter, food, and water. That just makes common sense. A dog must be at least 15 feet away from the edge of any public road, sidewalk, and not in an open area for teasing or attacks, or where ground is continuously wet or muddy. The dog must be tethered in a manner that will prevent the animal from leaving any part of the owner's property. The dog must be 6 months of age or older, so you couldn't tether a puppy. The dog must not be sick or injured, and if there are multiple dogs, each dog must be tethered separately with sufficient space placed between the dogs to ensure that there is no contact with another tethered animal. And of course, any person in violation, if there's a fine listed there in that ordinance. This section does not apply to non-domesticated fowl, except animal husbandry practice and farming operations. The training of animals, so, if somebody was worried about, at least Florence County's version, if you were tethering it so you could train the animal, it seemed like that's okay. That doesn't mean for periods of time. I bet that means somebody's got to be present with the animal. The practice of veterinary medicine, agriculture, practice, forestry, they've got tons of exemptions in here. It shall be illegal for anyone to allow their dog's voice or any other sound produced by their dog to be projected into a human habitated structure. Okay, where the owner or lawful tenant inside the structure finds the sound to be intolerable. Noises must be documented in at least 5 separate episodes in sequence, so they lay out how it goes. I really think we'll just kind of lay out the groundwork here, and then y'all take time, go back and think about it. We'll meet again. But something you got to consider is, what would you like Darlington County's ordinances to look like? I mean, between now and the time you meet again, certainly staff can put together suggestions, but
Well, who's going to enforce this?
That was my question.
well, the only people that can enforce are Darlington County codes or law enforcement. So
You remember me and this conversation?
aware, well aware.
Well, isn't there some kind of other way that would, I don't know what it was about whoever does it had the same right as the law officer?
They can't knock nobody up.
Yeah, they can
They just
issue
told
a fine,
us.
they can call law enforcement,
Right.
but our officers can't.
Well, I thought it was something that was changing that they could.
My
We
suggestion
go out to
was,
animal cruelty and look at it, and then if we think the sheriff officer can come out, we will call a deputy and they'll come out.
Right, but they can't act as law enforcement.
my suggestion was one time before, was take it out of code enforcement, give it to the sheriff, let the sheriff have a designated deputy.
Then the sheriff will want another car, another person, another radio,
Yeah.
everything in it.
One deputy can't do this.
No.
I'm just saying.
I know, well, unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. The fear is that it would go from well, you have how many codes officers?
I have one animal control, one litter control, and one nuisance control, and the two litter, they fill in,
They fill in.
When they're really real big, if I have to.
We couldn't end up with, we don't want to end up with, I don't think, the expense of 4 additional officers to have one on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and,
Break down how many code enforcement you got in there, how many codes in Darlington County you consist of, how many
you can't break all that down.
calls, that's what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They might go in buildings and doing this and doing codes, they might be riding, doing other things.
Well, I have
We
3.
just looking at this right now, and I will come back with some more suggestions.
But I have, some of my code enforcement, they do the filter code, and I have 3 litter control. and-
But now, there's nothing that says the sheriff can't enforce whatever the rules are. See, that's the key. But now, if you're talking about additional staff, that's a whole nother discussion than what the rules need to be for animal safety and welfare.
Oh, this is groundwork right here. I'm
The
gonna make sure we
groundwork for
break
what?
all, I'm gonna make sure we break all this down here.
The groundwork
Because
for
I'm
what?
like, there's a lot of stuff going on with animals.
Because there's a difference between, are you talking about turning the
No,
whole
no, no, no.
process over to the sheriff? Or you
I'm talking about this right here, I'm just talking about this right here in
Oh.
general. A lot of people cruelty to animals, what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, there are people that are cruel to animals, that's for sure.
Something got to be done about it. You know, you ride around in your neighborhood, or whatever, dogs just run around doing what they want to do, going in other people's yards, and it's causing neighbors to be at each other.
Yeah, animosity is
Yeah.
a problem.
So we do need something on the book.
All right, we'll solve it.
Well, there's two others. There's Beaufort County ordinances for you to look at, and it's not quite, it's very similar, but it doesn't have, one thing I know I didn't see in Beaufort counties is this no more than 8 hours at a time on tether.
Right.
And I did not look through York counties in details yet.
And you can get one from Chesterfield.
We'll,
I talked to Chesterfield, and, what Chesterfield told me was they do have tethering where the chain cannot be directly on the neck, but they must have a collar, and the chain cannot be more than 10% of the animal's body weight.
That's the
They don't
same
actually
thing
have
that,
the simple meat like this.
well, that's the
That's
same
what
thing
they
to Beaufort, they wasn't 10% of the body.
yeah, that's similar.
They all have 10% except for,
But,
yeah, see, Beaufort County is no chain and tether shall weigh more than 1/8.
is it, one's got 110, one's got one, they're just different. But Beaufort County doesn't have the 8-hour maximum tether there, but it certainly has all the stuff about adequate shelter, food, water, sight, and that type of stuff being appropriate. But that's the first thing we want to consider, simply because, you know, you had a colleague to ask to look at that, because it's not currently addressed in our ordinances. And like I said, the next thing to be considered and to be thinking about, and of course you gotta do the reading and all to see what we got here as comparison, is the fact that we had a request to consider just adopting Beaufort County's, I'll read you the thing. This, Jim Cox sent this to me, he says, William Hatfield wants County Council to consider adopting a copy of Beaufort County's animal control ordinances. And he states that, and I don't know how to say this first name, but a Trice at Beaufort County Animal Shelter said that once the ordinance was adopted, there was a significant reduction in the animal population. And so he essentially recommended that we consider this Beaufort County's ordinances for Darlington County. So you certainly have a copy of Beaufort's to look at and start comparing, because it's gonna take a little time, and I think more than just one or two people need to do this. Compare what do we have to what we're talking about going to, what effects that's gonna have, can we enforce it, how much it would cost to enforce it. Because every county doesn't have the same thing, just like you noticed, one's got 1/10 the weight, one's got 1/8 the weight, one's got an hour restriction on the time of tether, and one doesn't have any restriction on time
I
of tether.
think the most important thing is the tether.
Yeah.
Was the state considering the law? That's it, that,
On tethering or
Yeah.
all?
Yeah.
tether, I think it was on that, so I don't know where they are.
Is something been introduced already?
The sheriff said there was out, but they have not been
Introduced,
I
also.
think it's being discussed.
discussed.
So I hadn't seen anything come across Association of Counties.
So, I have a question on our ordinance, to what Mr. Davis is, I think, alluded to in his area. Says it's unlawful for any owner's dog, this is the first paragraph, roaming. So, two of the things you were talking about, tethering animals, that's already in our ordinance, where you're not supposed to allow dogs or cats to roam.
And we just need to see this for that.
So, but I want you to look through, Beaufort County's ordinance even includes information about feral cat colonies, mandatory spade and neuter, though I do not see it address who pays for this spade and neuter process. One thing we do want to get you that you don't see in here is Beaufort County's ordinance keeps alluding to fees for things like licenses and whatnot, and the fees are not in the ordinance itself, so they're probably listed elsewhere in their code of their list of fees. So can you make sure we get a list of the fees and send to them? so they can see that as well. Like Florence County's ordinance, if I remember looking here, there's throughout,
Right.
their fees or fines are
Or
defined
county room, too.
defined in the ordinance, but Beaufort's counties is not. You know, the point and the importance of a subcommittee is to take information, read it, study it, look at it, discuss possible suggestions, to try to have some minimal, some additional prep work done prior to it going out before the whole council. And thought this is one that council should be involved in, not just staff, putting it together and sending it out to you. Sometimes that's the way it comes, and sometimes it's not. Until you have time to read and divulge and go through it, and it's gonna be hard to have a lot of detailed discussions. Some of whose penalty. Does it say how much that is on? Oh, that's infractions. I'm talking about like they have two different fees, a lifetime licensing fee, an annual licensing fee. There's several fees in there for their ongoing normal operations that aren't fines type thing, that we don't have, and I'm pretty sure Florence doesn't have in theirs unless I totally missed something I'm looking at. Some of these barely address what we call livestock, and a couple of them give a lot of detailed descriptions of what is livestock, and I think without involving the ag community, that would be inappropriate to do. But the general description of livestock is pretty simple. And then we may have to, before anything's ready, suggest bring some other individuals in to ask them what they think and what their opinion is on it. So this is not just a cut and dry unless you just arbitrarily go take what somebody else has done and stamp it. This is a process to make sure we get what's best fit for Darlington County. Other than the tethering, you don't have any other thing. I know y'all heard that before, and I know you had not heard about the request to adopt Beaufort County's ordinance with any other issues that keep coming up that y'all are aware of. And Terry, is there any that keeps coming up over and over? I mean, I know y'all trap animals where people call and say a dog's on my property, it's not mine, but Humane Society takes custody of those, right?
So Terry's input would be vital in this, what she might see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other issues that come up regularly or requests?
We have a lot of crap requests. And warning people, think about the neighbor. They don't like the warning, so a lot of times the warning kills.
You talking about like for either trespass or leash law issues or noise?
We don't do that.
We don't have anything in there that's addressed as a noise.
Do you understand how we get the reports from the Humane Society, Animal Shelter, about the number of animals? Do you understand about what's primary contributors to all these excessive numbers?
I think some of that's subjective.
I mean, that, something we should look at.
Well, if we do it, we ought to do it by comparing it to other counties around us too. We ought to get Kershaw County, Chesterfield County, Lawrence County's numbers and see how they compare to our square miles, our population density, just different factors that you can kind of try to draw a comparison to see where we stand, where it's good, bad, ugly, you know, whatever it happens to be there. But as far as the factors that contribute to the fact that our numbers, first let's see if our numbers are different than everybody else's.
Well, my concern is the number of volunteers would help keep that situation under control because you're adopting whatever measures they have. The number of volunteers starts to drop, and then you have, it falls back on the county if you don't have a large group of volunteers that are doing what they're doing today, and all of a sudden those numbers go from 4,000 or 5,000 to 6,000. There's no mechanisms in place to understand, first off, the baseline, or better or worse than normal. It seems to be a very large number.
What'd you say, you thought it was 4,200
I think when I first started looking at it, it was around 5,000, but I think the last couple of reports, because I noticed it was a considerable drop, but it was still 4,200 or something. I don't think it's been under 4,000.
That's animals per year.
I'm not gonna understand that piece of it, but I think these others are being cruel to the animals and it's trespassing. Or most of those just based from complaints, neighbors complaining, they go out, so react.
When you look at a trap animal, how long you look at before they come here? Oh, once you take it to the shelter, you.
Then we return it to the animal.
So wants to finalize something at all, to just kind of get discussion started and give y'all some reading homework and know the two, the two main points that we want to discuss is one, the request to bring back information on the tether, improvement on the tether part of the ordinance, and two, to consider Beaufort County's ordinances.
The other thing that we
And I don't know why they picked Beaufort County, that was just that individual's suggestion for Beaufort County.
but we have copies of whether the municipality, the city of Hartsville, I think it probably makes sense
Well,
to
I
be,
would say, we're only talking about Hartsville and Darlington.
certainly makes sense to try to do something.
Well, I don't know if we do the same thing now, because they might do something, because they're in a tighter, more, I don't know, we'll just have to see, I don't wanna make any assumption at this
Yeah, well, I'm
point,
just saying
and
something.
set a standard that we might not can keep until we really review it and look at it.
Well, my thought was more along the line, if we came up, adopted something on the tethering part of it, they don't have something in their ordinance. Did something
I got you, yeah.
Not to fully adopt it,
Okay.
and just, we don't wanna do something.
They certainly need it for comparison, and
Yeah.
do they have a whole set of, did the two towns have a whole set of ordinances separate from ours for animal control? Do they do their own? Well, now, Hartsville,
They have their own.
so we don't trap anything in Hartsville, and we don't trap anything in Darlington. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, but make sure we don't ever do anything. So for the two smaller municipalities, we'll do some assistance in there now. Okay.
Or you probably do side hill or something.
Well, I think we have so many we'll do a month, but it's not like where they're only animal control. We'll certainly have any, yeah, I'll say if anything comes up, she will get this stuff, and we'll email it to you. And then if you got a question or something, additional information, but I think it'd be important to get back together, sit down, lay all this stuff out again, and just talk through it, work through it, and see what kind of formulation, what we end up with in the end, that y'all can consider sending to council as a whole from the subcommittee. We haven't used subcommittees very much in the past. Every once in a while they have, but it hasn't, not recently, but. That's really it this time, just to get the conversation started, get y'all some information.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time.
And if you just got
Serious,
no
thanks for pulling all
school
this together, I was hoping to have something to read tonight.
bus,
I got finished planning.
I'm not gonna ask.
You know,
You you like somebody else does good books, ain't calling no names. I'm just gonna say, y'all don't hand out nothing small.
I think the February meeting will be, got the comprehensive plan, and you got, several other things coming up on there, so. There'll be a few items on that one. Sometimes the meetings are short, and sometimes they're more in-depth.